Well, we are now 2 days past the date on which Donald Trump claimed he would be arrested. And it is not clear when or if the Manhattan District Attorney will actually bring charges against the ex-president in his investigation of the hush money payment Trump made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. But that arrest announcement has borne fruit for the Trump campaign coffers, that is. The ex-president has raised $1.5 million in the 3 days after he claimed on Truth Social that he'd be arrested Tuesday. And now Trump is planning a victory lap this weekend. He will hold his first campaign rally of the year in Waco, Texas, during the 30th anniversary of the deadly siege there. So, despite what you may see in the headlines, I don't think that the ex-president is panicking. I think this is all part of the same old usual Trump shtick, where he turns the narrative around in his favor to further his objectives, and make a little bling on the side. You have to remember, Donald Trump ain't normal, and there ain't nothing normal about any of this. Joining me now is George Conway, prominent conservative attorney and former Republican. George, it's good to see you, my friend. What do you make of all of this? Is Donald Trump panicking, or is this all a part of the shtick that I think it is?
Well, I think those two possibilities are not mutually exclusive. As you say, he's not a normal man. He is a narcissist, a pathological narcissist, a malignant narcissist, a narcissistic sociopath. You can use any of those terms interchangeably. He is panicked and terrified. And narcissists live in panic and terror that their true selves, their true inadequacies will be revealed to the world. So they create this false image of themselves, and they lie and they brag and they say things about themselves that aren't true, see, e.g. George Santos, and at the same time they want to make themselves the center of attention. So yes, he is absolutely putting on the old shtick of trying to get as much attention as possible and trying to raise money off of it and get the grift off of it. But the fact of the matter is, he is terrified, and you can see it in his truth social media posts, which have taken, they're insane to begin with, but they've taken a whole new level of extreme nuttiness. These all-capped tweets, and he tweeted something today where he had they juxtapose a baseball, him holding a baseball bat next to a picture of Alvin Bragg. I mean, it's something that could get his bail revoked someday. I don't know. So he's because of his, he is a severely disordered personality, and he's not very smart. And what he's doing here is just instinctive. He lashes out because he feels he's being attacked. He feels he's being humiliated. But at the same time, he's going to put on a show to basically to gin up his followers. And that's what the danger is here, is that he will keep doing this over a period of several months, of a period of the next year and a half. I happen to think he's going to get the Republican nomination, and he is going to try to foment violence as he did on January 6th. He's not going to do a very good job of it this week. It's just a little too early for that. But if he keeps pounding on something for months, which he's going to be unless the judges put gag orders on him, you'll see people starting to try to do things like they did 2 years ago, sadly.
So, on this idea of Trump panicking, which is, you're right, two things can happen at the same time. I can panic and raise some money. You have Trump referring to and calling out the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, today as a danger to our country who should be removed immediately, and said he's doing the work of anarchists and the devil. To me, that's Trump. Some say he's flailing. At least a little bit. I think some of this has gotten under his craw because he doesn't have the power structure behind him to really fight back. How do you interpret those types of messages coming from him?
Well, he is flailing, and it is Trump. Trump is a continual flailer. He's flailed his entire life. He's flailed in and out of bankruptcy. He flailed in the 2016 election. He flailed throughout his presidency through 2 impeachments. He just lashes out and externalizes everything because he can't look inside as a narcissist. He can't view his truthful self and look at himself truthfully, and that terrifies him. So he externalizes everything and attacks everyone and everything that doesn't do his bidding. And that's just his nature. It is him flailing about, but it is also pure Donald Trump.
So Trump is heading to Waco this weekend, and during the anniversary of the siege that the right-wing militia groups hold up as evidence of tyrannical government outreach, the message is clear. Don't you think? I mean, for him to go there, knowing what that stands for, what is the message you think Donald Trump is signaling to the Proud Boys and other anarchist types out there who want to see harm come to the government?
Well, I feel bad for the people of Waco because I'm sure there are many, 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 many nice people who live there. But, you know, he is absolutely trying to gin up the extremists. And he absolutely is saying that. He's saying, talking the language he's using in these all-cap truths on Truth Social are talking about taking back the country and about basically that the real criminals are the prosecutors, saying all sorts of things like that. And he is absolutely going to, you know, he's going to trigger some of these people. And then he's going to say, these are the things that happen when people do bad things to me. I didn't do it. You know, classic narcissistic abuser lines. And you made me do this to you. And you made these people do this to you because you're being to me, because you're being mean to me.